Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Sweetie. For those of you who are new here, it is time to review and wrap up my books for November. This month, I almost fell into a reading slump, mostly because I was kind of doing a lot of things. So it was a lot harder for me to pick up my books. And I ended up finishing one of the books that was meant for November, the 1st of December, but I still technically started it in November. So I'm going to include it into my reading wrap. And I also did not get to read the more holiday books that I wanted to read, so I can recommend them in this video before the holidays are over. Sorry about that. It was just a hard month when it came to reading this month. But anyway, let's go straight into the reviews. So this month I read a total of 7 books. 6 of them were physical. 1 of them was on Kindle. 3 were romance books. 3 were romantasy/fantasy/romance. And 1 was a fantasy that I think it's categorized as young adult, but I'm just going to say fantasy. In total, I read 3,884 pages this month. So jumping straight into my first book, I read The Long Game by Elena Armas, and this is a sports romance book. This was my blind date with the book that I read at the beginning of November. This was a cute, sweet, fluffy book. It was exactly what a sports romance is. So we have our main character, Adeline, who is the daughter of the owner of a soccer club, and she has basically dedicated her whole life to this soccer club. However, one day she just has a meltdown, a breaking point in public, which then embarrasses herself and in turn embarrasses the brand that she represents, so the soccer club. And her father kind of has enough and decides to send her away to this recluse small town. And this is all to do some charity work so then she can return to the club and just basically work on her image. So in this said small town, we have our main love interest, Cameron, who is a retired soccer player, and he's just trying to stay low until he is bamboozled by one of his friends to coach a little league of a girls' soccer team. So like I said, it's a cute, fluffy sports romance book. I normally don't gravitate to sports romances. It was nice to read this on my blind date with the book because I probably would have never picked it up, if I'm being honest. I just enjoyed myself. I enjoyed the surprise. I think I mentioned it in my bookish vlog last time, but I was actually expecting to read a dark romantasy. So I think there was kind of a switch up on the books and I ended up with a sports romance. So in a way, it was a very happy surprise. I'm going to give this a 3.5 out of 5, and as for spice, I think I'm going to give it a 2. First book of the month. The next book I picked up was Gleam by Raven Kennedy. This is the 3rd book in the Plated Prisoner series. Oh boy, isn't this huge! Without spoiling too much, we are following Aren. I always forget how to say this name out loud. And she's finally standing her ground. She's finally growing a backbone, and it just kind of follows her story, character development. I can't reveal any more because it does spoil a few things. Ooh, I mentioned that if this book did not pick up, I was going to stop the series. Well, we're finally getting somewhere. Something is happening in this book. We're finally moving the plot along. Our main character is finally growing a backbone and breaking free, so the character development is working, but it is moving at snail pace. So slow. Should this book be over 700 pages long? Absolutely not. More than half of this book is filler. So much filler in this book. A lot of nothing is happening. And it's just the same dialogue over and over and over again. I was really hoping to see a shift into focusing more on the plot since we've already developed our characters quite a lot, but we still haven't shifted from what the story currently is following. I could definitely see the plot develop, but it's developing so slow. So slow. It's a very slow book. Will I continue reading this? At this point, I am invested, so I will continue reading it. Like I said, I don't think it was worth 700 pages, but I really do want to know what happens next because again, it ended in a cliffhanger. However, I am not going to buy the book because this book is on Kindle Unlimited. I think the whole series is on Kindle Unlimited. So I'm just going to stop buying the physical copies. So I'm going to rate this a 2.5 out of 5. And as for spice, I'm going to rate it a 2.5 out of 5 as well. So that book almost put me in a reading slump, and I decided I needed something once again fluffy to kind of get back into the reading mood. So I picked up You Again by Kate Goldbeck. So this book follows our main characters Ari and Josh, who meet the first time and have not the best first impressions of each other. So then throughout the span of, I believe it's 5-10 years, I lost count how many years passed, they meet again in the most random circumstances until they finally meet one last time. They are both basically heartbroken, and they find comfort in the fact that they both are going through something similar. The two end up forming this kind of strange friendship to kind of help each other get through this slump in their life. Can I just say, Ari is one of the most annoying characters I've ever read about. She gets on my nerves so bad. So bad. I don't know. I think it's just her self-defense mechanism, and I might just be projecting and I might end up being kind of like Ari when it comes to self-defense mechanisms. So that might be why I find her annoying. But I still really enjoyed this book, even with Ari's flaws and Josh's flaws, because he was a little annoying too at the beginning, but I feel like eventually he grew a lot in the book. So did Ari, but Josh I feel like had a really strong character development moment. This overall felt like a women's literary fiction book rather than just a romance book. So it's not an easy indie romance book that you normally would read. This has a lot more like thought to it, if that makes sense. The wording, the phrasings, they're more metaphorical. There's more descriptive moments. The writing itself was just really pretty. I felt like it elevated it a little bit more. There's a lot more conflict within the characters. There's a lot more depth within the characters too. They're so humanly flawed, and I don't know if you've noticed a pattern, but usually when there are humanly flawed characters, I really enjoy reading about them because in a way you could relate with them a little bit more because they're not these perfect characters. It was a really enjoyable book in that aspect. Perfect for the fall winter season. Like, it starts off in the fall time, it's cold, we transition all the way till New Year's and post New Year's, and it was just that perfect time to read this book. Not necessarily Christmassy, but if you want a break from like holiday books, this would be a good one because it doesn't focus on the holiday, more of the season itself. And yeah, it just had some very real moments of people who are just trying to heal and move on from something that happened in their life. So I absolutely really thoroughly enjoyed this book, and I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. As for spicy, I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5. Am I gonna have to move this back so y'all can see it better? I'm going to move back a little too. Hold on. I picked up one of the books I'm reading for one of the book clubs I'm in, and that's Phantasma by Kylie Smith. Pretty sure you pronounce it Phantasma, but I'm a Spanish speaker, so I'm going to be pronouncing it Phantasma. If that gets on your nerves, I'm sorry. This is a gothic, paranormal, dark fantasy, romance kind of book. This follows the story of Ophelia, who comes across her dead mother in the living room of their manor, and she has to quickly react because she has a very small period of time for the transition of her mother's powers to pass over to her. I'm just going to tell y'all they're necromancers. They'll explain what that necessarily means in the story, but no, they're not witches, they're necromancers, which was one, pretty cool, but I'll get to that. However, after her mother's death, Ophelia starts to learn a lot of secrets that her mother and her younger sister Genevieve keep. Eventually, she finds out that their manor is in danger of being taken away. Genevieve decides, hey, I'm going to join this haunted house called Phantasma that is run by demons and devils and all of these nightly creatures. That is a very deadly challenge, but we might be able to save our house. Genevieve does this in secret. When Ophelia finds out, Ophelia chases after her and also joins. So the story follows Ophelia, not Genevieve, but Genevieve is the reason why Ophelia joins. Going through this manor, finding this handsome ghost, trying to win all these challenges. So this is a book with challenges embedded into it. So I realize now that I'm really interested in those kind of stories. Overall, this was a refresher from the usual books I've been reading because it's more of a gothic paranormal romance. Like I mentioned, the people are necromancers, they're not fairies, they're not witches, they're something different. and that means their powers are different, what they can do is different. The challenges with the devils and the whole like manor, the ghosts, everything just gave such a spooky feel. This would have been great for Halloween if I'm being honest, but it is still a really good story if y'all want to read it. However, the pacing of the story was off because throughout the whole story I felt the build-up, it was good. It was good pacing. I love how descriptive it was. I love the challenges, but I believe once we start getting more into the romance aspect of it all, it kind of got rushed, and so the ending felt very rushed. The explanations felt rushed. The last bit of the book felt very rushed overall to me, so it did have a problem with pacing in that sense. So because of that, I did have to dock points because of the pacing, and they just didn't address a lot of things. So overall, I'm going to give this book a 3.5 out of 5, and as for Spice, I'm going to give it a 2.5 out of 5. Very interesting things. The next book I picked up, I did not want to carry this big book while I traveled for the holiday. I picked up House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J. Maas. This is the second book in the Crescent City series. Another big one. This might have been why I almost got into a reading slump. They were just really big books, all of them. So, like I mentioned, this is the second book to the Crescent City series. Without spoiling too much, basically, Bryce is taking a breather. She went through everything she went through in the first book and is now trying to live a normal life, trying to be as low-key as possible until basically she's kind of pulled back into rebellion schemes. And she kind of has to decide whether she wants to keep trying to live her normal life or is she going to do something about everything that keeps popping up in her life. That's basically what this book is about, again, without spoiling too much. This is the first time reading the second book. This book does rely a little on the whole Maas universe kind of story plotline that she has going on. You don't have to read the other series to understand what's going on in this book. However, it is a lot more enjoyable. The Easter eggs, the ending, everything is a lot more enjoyable just because you're just like, oh my god, I know what they're talking about. It's nice to connect the dots from like the other books basically. This book has so much, absolutely so much going on. Character wise, I'm still not a big fan of Hunt. Rune, still love him. Deck and Flynn, absolutely adore. They remind me of the Bat Boys. So wholesome. I love them so much. I really hope they're safe and sound through the rest of the series. New characters introduced, very interesting reveals, very interesting twists. Like I said, the ending had me shrieking. Oh my god, I want to know so bad what happens in the next book. So bad. I think my only complaint about this book, I feel like Danica's secrets is a catch-all for anything else that is being thrown into this plot. In a way, I feel like Maas wanted to add a little bit more to the plot, but because it wasn't at the beginning of the series, it's kind of like,
Danica kept this a secret. Danica kept this a secret.
I don't know, it feels like a catch-all and it almost feels kind of like a cheat because of that. But that's again a personal preference, not really anything too bothersome. Another thing I have with this book is that, do you see this? This is long. This is huge. This is a huge book. Just holding this book up is hurting my hand. Does it need to be this big? Absolutely not. There's a lot of fluff in this story as well. A little bit too much. This could have been cut down at least 200 pages. I feel like these Crescent City books are so big, and I don't know if it's just to address the world building of it all, but they're just too big for no reason, in my opinion. They do not need to be this big. But overall, I still think it's a good book. I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5. This was good. As for Spice, I'm going to give this a 2.5 out of 5. Giving my camera another break because geez, this camera overheats so much. The book I picked up next, I was on my fantasy grind, and this was a fairly small book that I can at least take with me on my holiday vacation, and that is The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson. This is the second book to the Mistborn series. As you can tell by how damaged it is, I thoroughly enjoyed this book. So as I mentioned, this is the second book to the Mistborn series without revealing too much on what happened in the first book. Vin and Ellen have to pick up where they left off. Now they have this kingdom they need to protect. However, they're still being threatened by all of the other kingdoms that formed in the other dominants, and they all want to take away Luthadel, which is where they're at, the main kingdom. Like I said, this is a fantasy story. This story, however, feels like there's two stories going on at the same time because you have the political mess, all of the political play. It is heavy on politics, especially the first half of the book, which makes absolute sense because, spoiler if you want to skip ahead,
You need to focus on the politics of it all if you're post-rebellion. There's no way you cannot focus on politics after you overthrow an empire.
and the spoiler. So there is a lot of heavy political play, which I absolutely appreciate. It is a mess. It is an absolute mess, and there's so much philosophy involved. It's very complex. It's absolutely complex, and I really love this kind of play when it comes to epic fantasies because it just makes sense. It makes it more realistic in a way. That is part of what's happening in the book. The other part is still the magical element, this power, these beings, all of this magical stuff that's happening, all combined just makes for a good book in my opinion. I love Vince's character development from her first book to this book, her inner turmoil of how she's worshipped and looked at. I like Ellen's mind of like political play. How is he supposed to approach all of this? How is he supposed to make his people happy? It is a really good story. So much happens. I think in the first half of the book, because there was so much political play, it was very slow. And I know some people may not like that, but politics major, I absolutely loved it. In my opinion, I thoroughly enjoyed this book. So overall, I'm going to give this a 4.5 out of 5. Close to a 5, but not quite there yet. Really good book. If you have not read the Mistborn series so far with the second book, I definitely recommend it. The last book I read for the month of November, this is also a book I read for a book club that I am in, and that is How My Neighbor Stole Christmas by Megan Quinn. This is a fluffy romance holiday book. So this book follows our main character, Story. Yes, her name is Story, who is back in Kringle Town. Absolutely, yes, Kringle Town. I'm saying these things correctly, by the way. After being away for a decade. Kringle Town is a small town that's Christmas year-round. Everything's Christmas, and it is amplified during Christmas season. She's back in Kringle Town because her aunt hurt her hip and needs to be taken care of. So Story and her sister Taryn are called over to take care of their great aunt. The great aunt, sneaky as she is, decides,
Hey, Story, you're going to enter this competition called the Christmas Kringle Contest for me because I can't compete this year.
Story is basically forced into this contest. She's just not so happy to be doing it. Insert our main love interest, Cole, who is the grump of the town. Cole does not believe that Story should win this contest because of a conversation that they had 10 years ago. He decides,
I'm going to join this contest because she does not deserve this title.
And is dead set to compete against Story the whole time. This book read like a Christmas book. Like, think Dr. Seuss, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, definitely reads that way. There's a little bit of a fourth wall break in there, which is kind of funny. And overall, it's just a cute, fluffy holiday romance. Definitely gets you in the mood for Christmas. Like, the amount of Christmas references to movies and pop culture is huge. However, as fluffy and cute as this book is, there is a lot of spice towards the second half, in my opinion, for this kind of book. I was not expecting it from this kind of book, if I'm being honest. The fun little trials that they have for this Christmas competition, it's kind of like put to the back of your mind, because then we have like this big chunk of spice on the second half of the book and then brought back in towards the end. I just wish it kind of like blended in a little bit more, because I was really enjoying the competitiveness between the characters. I was really enjoying these challenges. They sounded so fun. It made me want to do some of these things. Just because of that, I do want to rate it a little lower. I was really enjoying the Christmas vibes. So overall, I'm going to rate this a 3 out of 5. As for spice, I'm going to rate it a 3 out of 5 too. So those are all the books I read for November. An honorary mention to this one book that I wanted to read for this month, but I did not read. I just started it. But just in case you guys want another Christmas rec, I don't know if this is a good book. Disclaimer, I don't know if this is a good book. That is Sugar and Snow by Irene Davis. It's currently the book that I'm reading. It seems to be like a Nutcracker retelling. It sounds fun so far from what I've read. I literally am in like page 10. Don't come at me if it's not a good book. I hope it is. You'll hear more about it in my December wrap up. But anyway, These are all the books I read for November. Not that many, but also I have like 3 of them that are over 500 pages. So I think I did a pretty good job if I say so myself. But I think that's it. If you've read any of these books, leave a comment down below. I would love to know what books you've read. If you have any holiday recommendations, let me know. I have not gotten my books for December yet. Would love to know. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't done so already and you are interested, please subscribe. I usually make reading content, book content, and some lifestyle vlogs here and there. But thank you all so much for watching. Have a beautiful day, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.